in this lesson we'll look at how we can build the scoop into the hood. So anytime that you're working with geometry that you're going to be smoothing after, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to create kind of hard edge details that are extending out of something that is kind of smooth without creating a lot of geometry. So we're going to look at how we can kind of get a good balance between that. So we could just smooth this whole thing, get a bunch of polygons in here, and then use those to build out the scoop. But we're going to try to maintain kind of the low res quality of this hood and still be able to get kind of some sharp edges here. So the scoop comes out obviously at the top here. So I'm going to first create a polygon selection, and I want it to come out to basically right out here. Okay, so I'm going to just select all of these polygons, and then I want to make sure to select all of the polygons in the middle here. So we basically have these selected. So the first thing that I want to do is to inset them just a little bit. Something like that is totally fine. Now we'll just do a quick extrude. Now the extrusion height, I'm not going to make too big. So just something like that. Say OK. And now we want to rotate it around. So I'm going to rotate it, go to the side view, and we can just kind of rotate it, and then we'll push it down to kind of the height that we want it to be. Okay. So say something like that. And if you want to have any sort of a shape to this, if you want to grab the back end and just pull this down, you could do that. Maybe pull this up and give it a little bit more shape rather than just straight. Okay, so that leaves us with something like this, which right now is going to be very, very soft. It's not really going to be what we want if we go ahead and smooth this. Now, we have the geometry in here for this wind split down the middle, and that doesn't continue on the top of this, so we can actually use these lines to help us, right? So let's go ahead and go to an edge selection. Okay, I'm going to delete the 3 edges on the front here. I'll go ahead and just hit backspace. Now I'm going to drag across in a vertex selection, drag across, and get basically all of these guys. Okay, all these vertices up here, and then I'll just scale them out in the X, and then I'll bring those lines out here. So what we want to do is create some resolution along these corners so we can get something that's nice and tight. Okay, and back here we can pull those back in a little bit if we want to. So it's not quite so tight in there. And then we've got one of these points that's kind of buried below because of the shaping that we did, and we can go ahead and pull that up just a little, just kind of clean things up. Actually, that's part of these guys, which weren't scaled out. So I'll go ahead and pull those out just a little bit. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So now that we've got this, what we want to do is actually create the same sort of line down here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Cut, and let's go to Edit Geometry, Cut, and I'm going to continue this line down right here to here, and then I don't want to take this the whole length of the hood, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off in the middle. Right in there. I'll do the same thing over on this side. And right there, and then let's go ahead and connect it over to this point in the middle. Okay, so we're starting to get some geometry built in there. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and add a line right across here. Okay, so let's go ahead and just select an edge and a ring. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and do a connect all the way down under Edit Edges, and just slide that up. And so this is kind of going to be the width of our scoop there. And go ahead and go to Cut, and just cut down across there to create that. All right, so now we have a polygon here that we can use to create the actual inside, or the inside of the scoop itself. Okay, so I'm going to just rotate this a little bit, and let's go ahead now and just extrude that. So we'll go to Edit Polygons, Extrude, extrude it just a small amount, apply, and then extrude a larger amount and push it way back. Okay, and then you can either just delete this, or you can actually detach it. I'm going to go ahead and just detach it. Okay, so we can actually put some sort of a color back there, but this will isolate this and allow us to add a little bit more geometry in here. All right. So the next thing I want to do is add a little bit more geometry in this direction. So we need some geometry right in here to make that nice and sharp. But if I add it right now, it's just going to continue across the whole surface. Okay. So what I want to do is kind of hide it back here, basically. Okay. So I'm going to take these edges kind of right in here, and for now I'm just going to delete them. Okay, so now when I take an edge selection right here, select a ring, it's going to stop right there, and that's exactly where I want it to stop. So if I go around now to the front and run, do the connect, use the connect tool, and just pull this across to right in there. Okay, and I'll do the same thing over here. You can see that it's cut it off. It hasn't added any resolution anywhere that I don't want it to go. Do the same thing over on that side. And now what we can do is come in and draw this out in any way that we want to. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to cut, and I'll just draw this down kind of right in here. It's on the back end of this, so it doesn't need to be real pretty. Alright, so that's starting to get a little bit more geometry in there. We also need to come in, select a ring selection around here. In this case, it's going to stop right at that point, so that's something that we need to be aware of because of the geometry that we created in the back. So now we'll go ahead and do connect, and we want to have two segments on this time, one in the bottom, one in the top. So we'll go ahead and decrease the slide to 0 and use the pinch to move those in. So just getting some geometry in there. We need to do the same thing over on the other side as well. Okay, do a ring selection, and we'll do our connect one more time. Alright, and want to make sure that we've got just the edges selected that we want. Like I had a few too many edges there. Just make sure that I've only got the edges I want. It looked like it turned the corner there a little bit. Alright, so we'll go ahead and do that again. Connect, and say OK to that. Alright, so now what we need to do is actually finish out these lines here. So just to make things kind of nice and clean. Looking at this, we also want one up here, so we might as well add that so that we know what all geometry we have to work with in the back there. Now this will enable us to get something that's a little bit harder up there. So we'll go ahead and again connect. This time we'll just use one segment, and let's put it kind of right in the middle and say OK to that. Okay, so and that one went all the way across because it was on the top there, so that's fine. That's totally fine. So now what we can do is come in back here, and I'll just take this, cut, and draw from here over to here. And you can take a little bit more time if you want to and clean this up. But I'm going to go ahead and just call that good. And now this one, do the same thing here. Okay. All right. So we're getting there. We want to have some sharpness on this side as well. So let's go ahead and start an edge selection right here, basically. And then we'll just control click on the up arrow for the ring selection. And let's select all the way down to the side. And let's do a connect. And let's drag it up to the front. Okay, and this one, I'm going to go ahead and go to cut. And we'll just cut this off right here. Right up there. And get on the point there. And right in there. Okay, let's see what this looks like all smoothed out. Then we can see if there's what all we need to do to this. So if I go ahead and smooth it now, turn off our edge faces, it's actually looking fairly good. So you can see we haven't affected the shape or curvature of our hood. Okay, you can see that it's still very low res except for the area where the hood is, and we were able to get some nice sharp edges in there rather than having something very soft, which is sometimes a little bit difficult to do. Like I said, you could go ahead and add resolution, or add resolution via like a smooth or turbo smooth or something, and then go in and use that geometry to add this. But a lot of times you'll have to come in and add geometry across the whole thing if you want to. When you're working with polygons, and which are then going to be smooth, that becomes an issue. Some of the other techniques, it's not as much of an issue. All right, so you might want to go ahead and tweak the geometry in the back just a little bit, kind of clean that up a little bit. I'm more concerned with getting that nice sharp look here on the scoop itself. Okay, so that's one way to do it, and it's one way to be able to just kind of maintain as much of this low-res nature as possible, so you keep your scene kind of nice and light. All right, so the next lesson we need to go in and actually add the scoop to the back, and that's going to extend from the trunk over along across the side. And so we'll go ahead and do that in the next lesson.